Welcome. My name is Naomi Yorde, and I'll be presenting this webinar on accessibility in libraries. This webinar is intended for library professionals who are interested in making their spaces more accessible. You may have already started looking into accessibility, or you might just be beginning to think about it. Either way, I hope you'll find something in this webinar that helps you going forward. What is accessibility? The Department of Health and Human Services has a good definition of accessibility for our purposes. They state on their website that accessibility can be measured by how successfully a person with a disability can locate, get to, and understand the wanted or needed information. Accessibility results in benefits like eliminating barriers to information and communications technology and encouraging development of technologies and techniques. They have many resources on their website discussing accessibility, such as fact sheets for accessibility definitions and impacts, and software accessibility reference guides. Library accessibility might include the library's website, assistive technology tools the library has, the space and layout of the actual building, the library's physical collection and digital materials, and internet and computer availability. A major component of accessibility is the concept of universal design. Guder defines universal design as the practice of designing for all people, or as it is often defined, designing for barrier-free access, specifically with the intent of creating barrier-free access to physical spaces for persons with a disability. Some examples of universal design include closed captions on television programs and movies, or curb cutouts for wheelchair users. People who walk without aids don't need the curb cutout, but it's a lot easier for everyone to use when stepping on or off a sidewalk. Closed captions make it easier for everyone to know what's going on in a show. Universal design is especially helpful because it can help many people easily navigate spaces, whether they have a disability or not. Ireland's National Disability Authority explains that no person operates with full capability for every activity for the duration of his or her lifetime. Accessibility or usability can be affected by, for example, a medical injury or condition, temporary, long-term, or permanent, an unfamiliarity with a product or environment, a lack of understanding, like in a foreign country, a physical attribute, such as height or size, and so on. Universal design makes it so a space is functional for the highest number of people, rather than an ableist space that caters only to people without disabilities. Booth explains the concept well, saying libraries, as purveyors of a vast amount of physical space and digital content, can and should help promote equitable access to all users, whether or not they are disabled. Additionally, Booth mentions an interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights for services to persons with disabilities that explains their rights to accessible information. It states, "The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution mandates the right of all persons to free expression and the corollary right to receive the constitutionally protected expression of others. A person's right to use the library should not be denied or abridged because of disabilities. The library has the responsibility to provide materials for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all the people of the community the library serves." See also the Library Bill of Rights. When information in libraries is not presented in formats that are accessible to all users, discriminatory barriers are created. There are 7 principles of universal design that helps explain what makes a space universal. The National Disability Authority of Ireland defines the 7 principles as equitable use, or the design is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities; flexibility in use, the design accommodates a wide range of individual preferences and abilities; simple and intuitive use, use of the design is easy to understand regardless of the user's experience, knowledge, language skills, or current concentration level; perceptible information, The design communicates necessary information effectively to the user, regardless of ambient conditions or the user's sensory abilities. Tolerance for error. The design minimizes hazards and the adverse consequences of accidental or unintended actions. Low physical effort. The design can be used efficiently and comfortably and with a minimum of fatigue. And size and space for approach and use. Appropriate size and space is provided for approach, reach, manipulation, and use, regardless of user's body size, posture, or mobility. Another aspect of accessibility is assistive technology. The Department of Health and Human Services also discusses assistive technology. They define assistive technology as any device, software, or equipment that helps people adapt to their environment. Examples include text-to-speech, dictation, closed captioning, high contrast, and alternate input devices. While universal design is the concept that spaces are accessible for the most people, there will still be some individuals who need special technology to access the same resources as others. Some of these are well known, like eyeglasses, hearing aids, wheelchairs, and canes. Less common technologies usually include screen readers, alternative keyboards and mice, and software to manipulate screen colors and fonts. These special types of assistive technology are the type of thing that would be beneficial for a library to have since most people can't access them regularly. It is important for library staff to be educated on different types of disabilities and various assistive technology tools that can help. MATES provides a brief look at some of the more common disabilities and provides definitions for each disability and tools that can help with each. She also notes that library staff must remember that no two disabilities are alike, and each patron will figure out what works for them. As MATE says, it is important to remember that it is the library staff's job to demonstrate and educate, but not to dictate. MATES provides the following definitions and tools. Visual impairments, a broad-based term used to describe many vision problems, with the more severe ones including macular degeneration, color blindness, or poor vision. A tool that might help people in this group is the ability to manipulate the size and color of text. Blindness. People in this group generally cannot move around safely without the aid of a cane, guide, or service animal. They would benefit from screen readers, text-to-speech software, and books in Braille. Hearing impairment and deafness. People who have a hearing impairment have difficulty hearing certain frequencies or volumes, and deaf people cannot hear at all. Closed captions and instant messaging are great tools for those with hearing impairments. Learning disabilities. Learning disabilities can range from a person not being able to interpret the meaning of letters or numbers, not being able to read or understand text, or not being able to see numbers correctly. Technology such as Kurzweil readers may help people with learning disabilities so they are able to hear the text rather than have to read it. Cognitive impairments. People with cognitive impairments may take longer to process information or may become overwhelmed with too much information. Tools that might help them include screen readers and the ability to modify the text, color, and contrast of the screen. Generally, people with cognitive impairment simply take longer to learn how to do something and may require extra assistance from staff. Mobility or dexterity issues. These might include people who use a wheelchair, who cannot move their fingers or hands due to arthritis, people who cannot stand or sit for long periods of time, or who may not be able to move any part of their body at all. Tools that might help them include different types of input devices, such as large or small keyboards, trackballs, scanning software, and many more. Now I will talk about some steps libraries can take going forward in order to make their spaces as inclusive as possible. There is a lot of variation in how accessible libraries are. The more funding a library has, the more likely it is to have assistive technology and accessibility measures in place. A smaller library might not have the resources to make their space more accessible. A difficult challenge arises in libraries that are housed in old, small buildings. They might only have one entrance that is accessed by stairs, or not enough space inside to move shelves around, or feature sliding or sensor-operated doors. The most obvious aspect of universal design is the physical space of the library. All patrons should be able to easily enter and move around the building, whether they walk, use a wheelchair, etc. This isn't always the case, even with new libraries being built. The Hunters Point Library in Queens is an example of this. The library was completed in 2019, and though it technically followed all requirements set by the Americans with Disabilities Act, parts of the building were inaccessible to patrons who can't use stairs. The library claimed this wasn't an issue, as library staff were happy to retrieve any materials from that area for those who needed it. A building built in 2019 shouldn't have issues like this. Making spaces that are accessible by everyone should be a priority. The area in Hunters Point Library contains some print material that staff could retrieve from patrons, but it also had seating and charging stations that patrons might want to use and wouldn't be able to. Web Junction has an article outlining basic steps libraries can take to become more accessible. They discuss programs like curbside pickup for patrons who have difficulty getting out of their cars. This article was written in 2019, before the COVID-19 pandemic began, and curbside pickup has been implemented by many libraries across the country. It would be beneficial to keep these services available for patrons who need it. Libraries can also partner with community organizations. The Web Junction article discusses opportunities for partnerships with schools for children who are deaf or blind, or local nonprofits that work with people with disabilities. Organizations like these are an excellent resource for reaching community members with disabilities, as they already know who lives in the area and what their needs are. The article also highlights the importance of language. Staff should be educated on people-first language in order to respectfully communicate with and about people with disabilities. The idea is to put the person before the disability, so saying people with disabilities is more appropriate than disabled people. Staff education is another important step in improving library accessibility. If staff aren't knowledgeable about resources, assistive technology, and how to use them, they can't effectively help patrons. If a library has assistive technology available, all staff should be trained on how to use it so they can show the patrons. They should also be aware of online resources that might assist patrons. There are free or low-cost options for many different needs, like Bookshare or Rewordify for kids. Many libraries offer Microsoft applications on their public computers, and Microsoft has a lot of information on their website about how to make their applications more accessible. The Library Accessibility Alliance provides many resources on how to help libraries become more accessible. They link a document on their website called the Library Accessibility Toolkit with sections like General Library Accessibility, Library Physical Space Accessibility, Library e-Resource Accessibility, Terminology, Tools, and Legal Considerations. There are links and works cited to help with every sort of accessibility issue that occurs in libraries. The organization also funds third-party accessibility evaluations of electronic resource library platforms, looking at 74 platforms such as EBSCO, Google Scholar, or Taylor and Francis. It is also a good idea to research the surrounding area that a library is located in to find out if there is a large immigrant population. If there are many patrons who speak other languages besides English, having bilingual staff who can better communicate with these patrons is a great step towards accessibility. Many people don't think about the layout of a library's website, but it can be a big factor in library accessibility. Does the website state a library's accessibility policy? Many libraries have this information online, but some don't list it. They should make a note of parking, entrance barriers such as stairs, whether the library is a single or multi-story building, and if there are elevators. Are the stacks wide enough for a wheelchair to fit through? How high do the shelves go? The website is also a good place to list any assistive technology the library has access to. If there isn't any, list that too. The library can provide links to free resources that might help patrons with disabilities, such as the Microsoft Accessibility webpage I mentioned earlier, and make a note if there is staff who can assist with these things. Additionally, the website itself should be accessible. W3C has a website that lists all of the aspects of a website that should be accessible, and tools to help website creators accomplish this. There should be captions on all pictures and videos, the ability to use a screen reader to read the information, keyboard navigation, and color contrast options. The Department of Health and Human Services also has an accessibility compliance checklist on their website, and lists things to look for such as website content, accessibility of printers, phones, kiosks, and has documents on how to check for accessibility in programs like Microsoft Word or Adobe PDF. Booth puts it eloquently when talking about accessibility barriers in libraries, stating that you don't have to become an accessibility expert to dismantle these barriers. The first step is making a commitment to awareness. There is no quick route to becoming a more accessible library. As long as librarians are committed to accessibility and continuously educating themselves and their communities, updating policies and services, then libraries will continue becoming more accessible to all users. Thank you.